5 years of marriage on the verge of collapse because of potato chip crumbs in the car? Emma discovers these crumbs in her husband Jack's car, recalling that he had strictly prohibited her from eating in the car, yet now he makes an exception for someone else. These tiny crumbs act like a fuse, igniting the crumbling marriage. What other unknown secrets and pains lie behind this marital crisis? Let's step into Emma's story together. 5 years into the marriage, I brought up the topic of divorce to Jack. The reason was that I found potato chip crumbs on the passenger seat of his car. And he had always prohibited me from eating in his car. He sneered. Is it just because of this? This time, I didn't lower my head as I used to. I just looked at him and said seriously, yes, just because of this. When I took the car to the car wash, the clerk frowned and asked me, "Ma'am, there are snack crumbs in your car. I think it's better to have an interior detailed cleaning?" I was taken aback and instinctively replied, "That's impossible." Jack couldn't stand anyone eating in his car. He had quarreled with me several times about this. How could there be snack crumbs in his car? The clerk motioned for me to take a look. I leaned into the car and indeed saw yellow potato chip crumbs on the passenger seat. There was also seasoning powder, scattered in the corner. When I drove the car home, I sat in the underground parking lot for a long time. Finally, I still turned on the dash cam. After searching for a while, I quickly found the footage from yesterday afternoon when I got off work. After a moment of silence, the sound of the car door closing came. A familiar female voice laughed and said, "You're quite punctual today." The voice was very pleasant, with the unique softness of a young girl. However, my heart turned cold at that moment. Jack said briskly, "Why did you come out so early? Doesn't your supervisor say anything to you?" Lily laughed. "They all know my relationship with you. Who dares to stop me?" If a mature woman like me said such words, it would only make people think she was snobbish and affected. But if a young girl who just graduated said it, it would make people think she was boldly cute. Sure enough, Jack chuckled and didn't say anything more. I suddenly remembered the time when we just got married. At that time, I was still working in his company. Once, when I met him on the road and wanted to say hello to him, he just walked past me as if he didn't see me at all. When I brought this up at home, he just frowned and said, "I don't want the people in the company to know about our relationship. What would they say about me? That I arranged for my wife to work here for personal gain?" After that, his parents also hoped that I could stay at home and take care of his daily life. So, I simply quit my job and became a housewife. But it turned out that he didn't mind his relationship with others. He just minded his relationship with me. The sound of a snack bag being torn apart brought me back to reality. Lily was crunching on potato chips. Jack didn't say anything. "Hey," Lily said, "I dropped some potato chip crumbs in the car. I'm sorry about that." "It's okay," Jack said indifferently. "Just wash it when we get back." After a pause, he continued, "Don't eat so many snacks. I'll take you to have something nice later." There was nothing more after that. In the dim parking lot, I sat in the car for a long time without making a sound. I tried to control myself from thinking about the past, but I couldn't help but remember that 2 years ago, when I was in a hurry to go to work and didn't have time for breakfast, I got into Jack's car with 2 sandwiches. He yelled at me to get out. "Get out of the car. Don't eat in my car," I explained anxiously. "I won't drop anything in the car, and this filling doesn't have much of a smell either." But he just gave me a look of disgust and then drove away with a slam of the gas pedal. I was left alone holding the sandwiches, standing in the parking lot in a daze. It was raining that day and it was hard to get a taxi. When I was rushing out, the heel of my high-heeled shoe broke. When I got to the office, I was in a mess and was severely scolded by my supervisor. I already had a bit of low blood sugar and hadn't had breakfast. When I was standing, my eyes went black and I almost fainted. It was my colleague who gave me a pack of cookies that I managed to get through the day. But now, he allowed someone to eat in his car. It turned out that his principles weren't unbreakable. It was just that he hadn't met that special person yet. I closed my eyes for a long time and took out the divorce agreement from my bag. This agreement had been printed out for half a year, but I never had a chance to take it out. To be honest, I was just reluctant myself. I had liked him for so long. This person had occupied my entire youth. From the first day I fell in love with him, I had been waiting for him to notice me. Then I waited until he fell in love with the school beauty. He was with the school beauty. His mother didn't agree to his marriage with the school beauty, and they broke up. He was heartbroken and, under the pressure of his family, he casually chose to be with me. But after waiting for so many years, I still hadn't waited for him to fall in love with me. In fact, the first time I saw Lily, my sixth sense as a woman had already raised the alarm. She was so similar to Jack's first love. Both had bright looks, passionate personalities, and were lively and cute. I noticed that his eyes lingered on her for a few seconds, and then he approved her resume. Even though her educational background didn't match the company's hiring requirements. The first time I felt something was wrong was when Lily called. In fact, it was all about work matters, but it was already unreasonable for an intern to directly call the chief executive officer. We were having dinner at that time, but Jack suddenly put down his chopsticks and almost fumbled to answer the phone. His voice was tense, as if he was a bit nervous. "Don't be afraid. I'll call Mr. Lee later and talk to him. He won't blame you." After hanging up the phone, he was stunned for a while, and then the corners of his mouth couldn't help but slowly rise. That night, he was in a very good mood. He even sang a song when he went to take a shower, which was very unusual for him. And I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. At first, Jack probably didn't mean to cross the line either. He didn't have much communication with Lily, even if there were occasional phone calls. They were all business-related. But love is something that can't be hidden. Even if you cover your mouth, it will still show in your eyes. He started coming home later and later, staying up all night typing on his phone, just like a young boy who had just fallen in love. No matter how much I cried or made a scene, he would just shut me up with one sentence: "If you can't live with it, you can get a divorce." Then I would give up. In fact, when I think about it, it wasn't him who defeated me, but my love. But now, I don't want to love him anymore. Getting a divorce because of some potato chip crumbs sounds quite ridiculous. But this was the last straw that broke the camel's back. When I handed the divorce agreement to Jack, he was typing and took it impatiently and threw it aside. "What is this? Are you going to buy a house again? I've told you many times that the current housing price." I interrupted him. "It's a divorce agreement. You'd better take a look. There are some property divisions that I still want to discuss with you." Jack was taken aback. Then he picked up the document and flipped through it casually. He sneered. "Emma, since when did you learn this trick of crying, making a scene, and threatening to commit suicide? I support you, provide for your food and clothing. Isn't that enough? Do I also have to accompany you to act out a romance drama?" I looked at him and said, "If you don't have dementia, you should remember that I originally had a job. It was you and your parents who insisted that I quit my job and stay at home to take care of you. Now, a 24-hour on-call nanny in the city costs at least $8,000 a month, which is completely enough for me to support myself. So you didn't provide for my food and clothing. Instead, I was taking care of you. Don't think too highly of yourself." Jack looked up at me in surprise, as if he didn't expect me to talk to him like this. Then he became angry and threw the divorce agreement aside. "What the hell are you doing all of a sudden?" I said calmly. "I saw the potato chip crumbs on the passenger seat." Jack frowned tightly. "Is it just because of this?" I nodded. "Yes, just because of this. It doesn't matter if you don't agree. I will file a lawsuit. But if this kind of thing gets out, it won't look good for you either." Jack stared at me intently. After a long while, he snatched the agreement back, took out a pen and signed his name on it, then threw it back to me. He sneered. "Are you satisfied now? Emma, I'm telling you, don't come crying and begging me to get back together like you used to." Like a dog, my heart instantly felt a sharp pain. I had mentioned divorce when I was the angriest before, but in the end, it was always me who gave in and begged him to make up. He knew exactly where my weakness was. And he knew exactly how to hurt me. But now I won't do that anymore. I picked up my coat. "Let's go. And let's go get the divorce certificate as well." Jack didn't make any sarcastic remarks this time. His expression gradually became serious. He stood up and looked at me steadily. "Emma, are you serious? You know that the house you're living in, the car you're driving, and your living standards and conditions are all because of me. You have to think clearly. Without me, you're nothing." I glanced at him. "Stop dawdling. The divorce department closes at 5 o'clock. If we're any later, we won't make it." "Fine." Jack frowned. "Emma, don't regret it." Getting a divorce certificate was much more troublesome than getting a marriage certificate. There was also a 1-month cooling off period. After going out, Jack didn't even look at me. He drove away directly, leaving me alone at the entrance of the divorce office. I took a taxi back to pack my things. In front of his furious ace, I only took a few pieces of clothes and left. Over the years, most of the things I bought were for him. Now I realized that I only had very few things of my own. A 28-inch suitcase could hold everything. I didn't have time to rent a house, so I stayed in a hotel first. When I finally lay on the bed, I belatedly realized that leaving Jack wasn't as difficult as I thought. Before, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to leave him. I thought I would be heartbroken to death. But now, it wasn't as painful as I had imagined. On the contrary, I felt a sense of relief, as if a huge stone that had been pressing on me had finally been lifted. Maybe I didn't love him as much as I thought I did. I was just used to loving him and didn't realize that in this messy marriage, my love had long been consumed little by little. The next day, I originally wanted to sleep until I woke up naturally and enjoy the hard-won relaxation. But unexpectedly, I was woken up by the phone ringing early in the morning. I sleepily picked up my phone and found that it was a call from Jack's mother. As soon as I answered the phone, his mother's voice rang out immediately. "I'm sorry, Emma, for disturbing you." Before I could say anything, his mother continued like a machine gun. "Remember to remind Jack that his uncle's birthday is next Wednesday. Don't forget to remind him to go home." "Oh, right. Don't drink alcohol then. You can drive back." I rubbed my forehead. "Mom, why don't you call Jack directly?" His mother said naturally. "Oh, I'm afraid of waking him up. He's so tired from work every day, unlike you who are enjoying a leisurely life at home." This was something his mother often said. In his mother's eyes, Jack, who sat in the office outside, was extremely tired. I, who cooked, did the laundry, cleaned the house, and took care of Jack's 3 meals a day at home, was enjoying a leisurely life. When they asked me to quit my job and stay at home, they said they would hire a nanny to do the housework. But then Jack told me that he didn't like strangers coming into the house and that since I was at home with nothing to do, I could do the housework myself. I squeezed my phone tightly and suppressed my anger. "I'm sorry, Auntie. You may not know this. Jack and I are already divorced." After saying that, I hung up the phone directly, ignoring Jack's mother's shouting on the other end. But I didn't even have a moment of peace until the evening when Jack's phone call came again. I answered it, and his voice didn't reveal any emotion. "Come home. My parents are here." I knew that with his mother's personality, she would definitely come to lecture me. I directly refused. "You guys can deal with your family matters by yourselves. I'm an outsider and don't want to get involved. Your parents are here too." With that, he hung up the phone. Looking at the black screen of the phone, I sighed. Since the matter had already been exposed, it seemed that I couldn't avoid it. Well, that's okay. There were some things I had long wanted to make clear. When I got home, sure enough, Jack's mother glanced at me and smiled. "You're back? Oh, it's normal for young couples to have a tiff. Maybe Emma was feeling bored at home and it's good for her to go out and relax. But Emma, it's okay for a husband and wife to quarrel once in a while. Jack still has to go to work and support the family. Besides, your parents are already at such an old age. You made them take a long flight all the way here. How tiring it must be for them." I frowned slightly. Jack's mother was like this. She always seemed polite on the surface, but in fact, she was a smiling tiger, with hidden thorns beneath her soft words. Jack was sitting on the sofa, as if he didn't hear anything. As always, I suppressed the disappointment in my heart and couldn't help but laugh at myself. At this moment, how could I still expect him to say something in my favor? How was that possible? Jack's mother was a person with a strong desire for control. At that time, she thought Jack's first love was too strong-willed and difficult to manage, so she threatened to commit suicide to force Jack not to be with her. Then she chose me, whose parents were both university professors. I had good personal conditions myself, and I had a relatively gentle personality. I still remember when I served tea during the wedding ceremony. His mother didn't take the tea for a long time. Instead, she took the opportunity to teach me that I should take good care of Jack in the future. She said it was not easy for him to work hard outside, completely ignoring the fact that I left my hometown and came to a strange place to work with him. Later, Jack's mother often came over. Sometimes I really thought his mother was strange. She seemed to be very reluctant to see Jack and me having a good relationship. In fact, there was a period of time after we got married when we had a good life. Jack seemed to want to get along well with me too. We even planned to go to the Maldives for our honeymoon together. But after his mother found out, she insisted on going with us. We didn't want to take her, and she didn't say much. She would just wipe her tears in front of Jack when he came home so that he could see it. There was no other way, so we had to agree to let her go with us. Those days should have been the happiest honeymoon in my life, but now I still don't want to think about it. It was a complete mess. His mother thought that I should be Jack's nanny. I didn't need to have feelings with him. Just taking care of his daily life was enough. And the most terrifying thing about her was that she always seemed smiling on the surface, but secretly made things difficult for me. For example, I hated eating celery the most. I thought celery had a strange smell, so I never cooked it at home. But after his mother came, she said on the surface that she would cook for us to let me have a rest, but she would cook celery every meal. Every time I said I didn't like it, his mother would look very self-reproachful and say that she was old and couldn't remember. Then she would keep smiling and put celery on my plate. "Emma, try the celery I cooked." I promise it's different from the ones outside. It's very delicious. It made me unable to eat it, and it seemed impolite not to eat it. I secretly complained to Jack several times, but he would say impatiently, "Mom is already at such an old age and still comes to cook for you. If you don't appreciate her, at least don't speak ill of her. Do you think what you're doing is appropriate, Emma?" Or in the hot summer, when Jack went to work, his mother would say that the air conditioner remote control couldn't be found and the air conditioner couldn't be turned on. Every time Jack came back, the remote control would magically be found again. I told her several times not to touch my underwear and that I would wash it myself. However, every time I just took it off and put it in the laundry basket, in the blink of an eye, she would put my underwear and socks together in the washing machine. But she would always wash Jack's underwear separately and would never mix it with his socks. These were all small things, but when these small things accumulated, they could really drive a person crazy. As time went by, I became more and more depressed. Jack also noticed what his mother was doing, but when he was a child, there was a flood in his hometown. It was his mother who carried him on her shoulders and saved his life. Later, when he was rescued, his mother exhausted her last bit of strength and was directly washed away by the flood. Fortunately, his mother was lucky. A neighbor waded through the water and grabbed her hand, saving her life. But his mother had been soaked in the water for too long and left with a lifelong illness. Her joints would ache terribly on rainy and cloudy days. Jack always felt that he owed his mother, and he couldn't say a word of reproach to her. So he simply avoided the problem. Either he would find an excuse to work overtime and not come home after work, or he would just sit in the garage and not come up, evading the conflicts between us. It was from then on that the last bit of warmth between us disappeared. Our relationship started to get worse and worse, and finally, it was irreparable. This time, I didn't swallow my anger anymore. I raised my head and looked straight at his mother. "Didn't you call my parents here? What does it have to do with me?" His mother was taken aback. "Emma, you..." I took a step forward. "Don't always bring up the fact that Jack is supporting the family. I had a job before. He asked me to quit and go work in his company, saying that the company needed a reliable accountant. Later, when the company was on the right track, didn't you discard me like an old tool and ask me to quit my job and stay at home to take care of him? Not to mention that I used to have a monthly salary of $20,000 or $30,000. Just think about how much it would cost to hire a nanny for my daily 3 meals, doing the laundry, and mopping the floor at home. How am I being supported by him? Do you mean that if I don't marry him now, he won't work anymore?" Jack stood up. "Emma, how can you talk to Mom like this?" I suddenly exploded. I strode up to him and shouted, "That's your mom, not mine. Cut that out with me. She didn't give birth to me or raise me for a single day. Before, I called her mom for your sake. Now that I'm going to divorce you, if you're so eager to make someone your mom everywhere, you can go, but I'm not that stupid." Jack frowned and wanted to say something. I cut him off. "Now you know how to raise your voice? What about when your mom forced me to eat celery? What about when your mom wouldn't let me turn on the air conditioner and tortured me in the summer? What about when your mom insisted on going on our honeymoon with us? You coward could only hide in the garage and didn't dare to say a word. Jack, how dare you say that to me? What kind of man are you? What the hell are you?" I was shouting and yelling, and all the grievances and anger that had been pent up for years were pouring out. By the end, my eyes were red, my reason was completely gone, and I was almost crazy. The whole family was stunned by me. Jack opened his eyes wide, and all the words stuck in his throat. After a moment, his expression became a bit complicated. I don't know if it was my illusion, but I seemed to see a trace of guilt in his eyes. My father was so angry that his face turned pale. My mother hugged me and started crying. "Emma," she said in a trembling voice. I buried my head in my mother's arms and cried silently. Now that I had come to this point, I finally understood who I was most sorry for. It was my parents who didn't agree with me marrying Jack in the first place, but I insisted and they had to give in. And myself, who had suffered so much. Look at this child. Is it really necessary to be like this just because of this matter? She's crying while talking. Jack's mother quickly recovered and forced a smile. "We're all family. It seems that you have some grievances against me. Maybe I'm old and sometimes my mind doesn't work well, and I'm not to your liking. But Emma, I've always treated you like my own daughter." Her words might have deceived me when I was in love before, but my mother, who was already of a certain age, turned her head around and spat. "I'm not dead yet. Why do you need to be her mother?" Jack's mother felt embarrassed. "What are you saying? Emma's parents? The child is still young and doesn't understand things. You're so old. Why are you joining in the fuss with the child?" My mother sneered and directly grabbed me. "Before, you insisted on marrying him and we had no choice. Now that you're finally awake, that's good. Let's go. Mom will take you home." With that, our family of 3 was about to go out. Jack rushed over and stopped us. Mom, today's matter is a misunderstanding on Emma's part. Please don't. My father shook off his arm and said coldly, when she wanted to marry you, I didn't agree. But Emma liked you, and we had no choice. We didn't ask for a dowry, a house, or a car. We even gave Emma a dowry of $500,000, hoping that you would be grateful and treat her well in the future. What did you promise me at that time? Jack was speechless under my father's questioning. My father suppressed his anger. You said you would treat her well, but what about now? My father was always cheerful before. Every time Jack went to our house, he would call him son-in-law affectionately. Sometimes when Jack didn't go back during festivals, he didn't mind either. He even told me not to quarrel with Jack, saying that the son-in-law was busy with his career and we couldn't delay his important work. This was the first time he had spoken so severely. Jack stepped back in shame. Dad, don't call me Dad. I don't have a son like you. Jack's mother wanted to say something more, but my mother turned around fiercely. Get out of the way. Don't push me to hit you. My mother was the most gentle Southern woman. She used to speak softly. This was the first time I knew that she could be so protective of her child. In the end, I still couldn't really leave the so-called home. Mainly because there was still a 1-month cooling-off period, and I also needed to deal with the property division. My parents still had to go to work, so they could only leave me a sum of money and go back. They also didn't forget to tell me, don't wrong yourself. Relax well this month. If you have anything, tell us. That night, I lay on the bed in the hotel and finally had a good sleep. In the 4th year of my marriage, I don't know if it was because of Jack's mother or the relationship between Jack and Lily that tortured me, but I started to suffer from severe insomnia. Sometimes I would keep my eyes open all night and couldn't fall asleep until dawn. For a while, I didn't want to do anything every day. I just felt very tired and thought that I didn't know what I was living for. It was really boring. After going to the hospital for a diagnosis, it turned out that I had moderate depression. I was prescribed medicine, but it didn't work very well. I still couldn't fall asleep. Now, I closed my eyes and felt a great sense of relief. I could finally have a good dream. I started sending out resumes and looking for a job. Although my parents said they would support me and let me relax for a while longer, I didn't want to be so out of touch with society anymore. In fact, the school I graduated from was even better than Jack's. At that time, I received offers from the top 4 accounting firms, but I didn't work for long before Jack asked me to quit. At that time, the accountant in his company left, and he couldn't find a reliable person to take over for a while, so he asked me to go to his company. Later, when he found a suitable person, he asked me to quit again. So in the past few years, I had been a housewife. Sometimes I saw the daily updates my classmates posted on social media. Some of them had achieved their dreams, working in the top 4 accounting firms or going abroad to Wall Street. Some had started their own companies, and some had gone back to their hometowns to become civil servants and were happy with their families. Only me, after all these years, apart from a messy and failed marriage, I had nothing left. Fortunately, I was still young and could start over. When I got back to the hotel at night, my phone suddenly received a notification. It was from the home surveillance, reminding that someone had entered the house. I was about to swipe it away, but accidentally clicked on it. In the video, Jack and Lily were entering the house together. I was stunned and didn't close the video. As soon as I left, he couldn't wait to bring her home. Well, he probably couldn't wait any longer. When I brought up the divorce, he must have been very happy inside. Jack seemed to be drunk. His eyes were half open and he was staggering. Lily struggled to support him and let him lean on the sofa, and then she poured him a glass of water. Jack took it and took a sip, but immediately spat it out. He frowned and said, "Cold water? Where's the hangover soup?" Lily said helplessly, "What hangover soup? I don't know how to make it. Just drink some water for now." Jack threw the cup on the floor, stood up unsteadily. The corners of Lily's mouth curled up, and she helped him towards the bedroom. It was really disgusting. Just thinking that they would have sex on the bed where I used to sleep made me feel nauseous. But unexpectedly, after a while, Jack ran out of the bedroom disheveled. Lily was only wearing a small camisole and was in a hurry to pull him back, but he suddenly shook off her hand and said drunkenly, "You're not my wife. You're not." Lily bit her lower lip. "I'm Lily. Aren't you going to divorce your wife?" "No way." Jack waved his hands and slurred, "I'm not divorced. I don't want a divorce. You're not my wife. Who are you? Go away." Lily was angry and annoyed. She had no choice but to put on her clothes in a hurry and slammed the door as she left. Jack stumbled and fell to the ground, moaning in pain. "Emma, I fell down." The living room was silent. He mumbled again, "Emma, my head hurts so much. Come and rub it for me." There was no response. He just lay there in the living room, looking so pathetic, and fell asleep. I put down my phone, not knowing how I felt. I thought that after the divorce, Jack would immediately get together with Lily. I thought he liked her very much. Jack was a person with strong principles, at least when it came to me. He didn't allow me to tell the people in the company about our relationship. He didn't allow me to eat in the car. There were many things he didn't allow me to do. But all these prohibitions didn't count at all when it came to Lily. He had no principles with her. Sometimes I hated him. If I didn't know how blatantly he favored her, I wouldn't have felt so pitiful. And so pathetic. I sneered. Sure enough, he looked for me just to ask me to take care of him. Every time Jack got drunk outside, I would make hangover soup for him, rub his head until he fell asleep, and then prepare the light meals he liked the next morning. He was probably already used to being taken care of by me like this. I was woken up by thirst at 2 o'clock in the morning and got up to drink water. When I came back, I couldn't fall asleep. After thinking about it, I turned on the surveillance again. Jack had already woken up. In the dark night, he was sitting on the sofa alone, staring blankly, not knowing what he was thinking. He still didn't seem to be very sober. After a long time, he covered his stomach and said hoarsely, "Emma, my stomach hurts so much. Where's my stomach medicine?" Jack had too many social gatherings and drank too much alcohol while working hard outside a few days ago, which damaged his stomach. Although I had nursed him back to health over the years, his stomach still ached whenever he drank. I would categorize the medicines and put them in a box, and mark with sticky notes how many pills to take each time and how long the shelf life was, making it easy to find. He had taken the medicine so many times, but he still didn't know where the medicine was. The surveillance could be connected to my phone for talking, but I didn't say anything. I just watched coldly. Jack bent slightly and shouted in a hoarse voice, "Emma, Emma." The only response to him was the ticking of the mantel clock in the night. So he stood up with difficulty and started looking for the medicine. The cabinet I had tidied up was turned into a mess by him. He threw everything on the floor. When he searched under the TV cabinet, he finally found the medicine box I had put there. Jack picked it up but didn't take the medicine. He just stared blankly at the sticky note on it. I could recall the words on it even with my eyes closed. Daxi aluminum magnesium carbonate chewable tablets. Take 1 to 2 tablets at a time, 3 times a day, 1 to 2 hours after meals or before going to bed. I wrote it down stroke by stroke. I was filled with naive and stupid love, thinking that I could exchange my sincerity for sincerity. In the end, I realized that what I thought was a desperate effort was just garbage that others disdained and could kick away at will. Jack was still squatting there, staring fixedly at the medicine box without moving. After I don't know how long, he slowly buried his head in his knees and remained silent. That night, he didn't take the medicine. Instead, he smoked alone in the living room. He just sat there silently all night. When I went to Jack's company to check the accounts and divide the property, I met Lily. I pretended not to see her and wanted to walk past her. In fact, regarding the matter of infidelity, I never liked to put all the blame on women. If Jack could have controlled himself, this kind of thing wouldn't have happened. But Lily stepped forward and blocked my way. "You're Emma, right? I want to talk to you." I sized her up. Sure enough, she was a newly graduated student, with a face full of youthful vitality and undisguised provocation. It was as if she had already regarded herself as Jack's wife. "I don't think we have anything to talk about. We wouldn't have any intersection in the future either." But Lily didn't think so. She took a step forward. "I think we still need to talk. I want to talk to you about Jack. You don't mind sparing half an hour, do you?" After thinking about it, I agreed. Mainly because I didn't want to be pestered by her all the time. If I didn't agree to her today, she might still pester me when I came again tomorrow. Well, I also wanted to hear what she had to say to me. In the coffee shop downstairs of the company, Lily ordered a cup of Blue Mountain coffee and smiled. "The coffee here is very fragrant. I heard that the coffee beans were personally brought back by the boss from the origin, and then carefully ground by hand. Jack likes the coffee here the most." I curled the corners of my mouth. A young girl who has just entered society still has a childish bluff. She always thinks she can play with other people's emotions. I said impatiently, "What exactly do you want to say?" Lily took a sip of coffee. "Jack doesn't like you. He told me that himself. I'm very grateful that you're sensible enough to divorce him, but I think since you're already separated, there's no need to have any contact in the future, right?" I understood. I guessed that last night Jack drove her away while calling my name. She felt humiliated and had a sense of crisis, so she came to me in a hurry today to assert her sovereignty. I lowered my eyelids. "First of all, whether to get a divorce or not is a matter between the two of us. As an outsider, you have no right to comment. Even if I don't get a divorce today, what can you do about it?" Secondly, Jack and I are legally married. What's your status to talk to me? The mistress who interfered in someone else's marriage? Do you believe that if I send out the evidence of you destroying someone else's family, you'll have to pack your things and leave immediately? Do you think Jack will choose between the company where he has worked hard for so many years and you? After saying that, I raised my head and looked at Lily. I don't want to waste my breath on you. I think it's beneath my dignity. But if you dare to act shamelessly in front of me again, I won't be so easy to talk to. Lily's face turned pale with anger, and she gritted her teeth tightly, but she didn't dare to say a word. I stood up and sneered. Oh, by the way, he always drinks instant coffee at home. You've never had real hand-ground coffee, have you? With that, I picked up my bag and left. After going upstairs, Jack rushed to the finance office in a hurry. His expression was a bit complicated. It seemed that he wanted to say something but didn't know how to say it. Finally, he squeezed out a sentence. Have you eaten? Let's go have a meal together later? I looked at his rather cautious expression in surprise. Jack pursed his lips and turned his head to the side. What was wrong with Jack, who had always been unkind to me? Was he still not sober from last night's heavy drinking? It seemed that he was. Showing kindness to me? Jack said in a low voice. I thought about it. I was wrong before. I won't contact Lily anymore. I'll transfer her to the branch office and won't let her appear in front of you again. I frowned. Jack, are you taking the wrong medicine? He was instinctively angry but suppressed it and continued. I don't think we need to come to this. We've been together for so many years. Emma, let's just forget about it this time. I sneered. You're willing to break up with Lily? Jack said indifferently. I was just interested in her for a while. Don't think too much about it. We didn't do anything. I believe that. When Jack had the closest relationship with Lily before, he never stayed out all night. In the situation last night, he even pushed her away. I guessed that he was just looking for the shadow of his first love in Lily. But so what? Anyway, he loved either this one or that one, and he would never love me. I can't just forget about it. I said expressionlessly. Hurry up and finish the property division. I'm waiting to get the divorce certificate and go back to my hometown. Jack frowned. Emma, you were the one who said you loved me desperately and wanted to marry me. What's wrong with you now? Just because of those potato chips? Even now, he was still talking about the potato chips. We were both shrewd people who had been in the business world for so many years. How could he not know what I really cared about? He was just deliberately avoiding the important issues and focusing on the trivial ones. I leaned closer to him and said softly, Jack, do you know what the non-renewable resources in the world are? He looked a bit confused. What? Coal, crude oil, natural gas. And love. Jack was stunned. Love is really a wonderful thing. It can be the most indestructible armor and spear in the world, invincible and moving forward without hesitation. But love is also the most fragile thing in the world. It can be worn away without being noticed. My love had been exhausted, just like a fire burning out. It was gone forever. I don't know if Jack's mind was messed up, but he actually started to admit his mistakes to me. He started calling and texting me every day. It wasn't anything important. It was all things like, I found a restaurant that has delicious food. Let's go there together tonight? How about we go on a honeymoon again? How about going to Tahiti this time? The gardenias on the roadside are really beautiful. Let's buy a pot and bring it back to plant. He seemed to have suddenly changed his nature. I even suspected that Jack was possessed by something unclean. In the past, these were the words I sent to him. But he rarely replied. After he got together with Lily, we almost had no communication at all. After thinking about it, I kind of understood that Jack was panicking. In fact, people are very selfish animals, and the purpose of all their activities is to make themselves live more comfortably. When he was with me, he thought I was boring and liked to find the feeling of his first love in Lily, just to make himself happier. But now he suddenly realized that I would also leave, and he didn't want to lose me, the nanny who loved him wholeheartedly and could take care of him meticulously. By comparison, he still thought I was more important. After all, young girls were everywhere, but there was only one fool like me who loved him so much. So he wanted to return to his comfort zone and even sent Lily away for this. Did he love me? I don't think so. Maybe he didn't love his first love either. Otherwise, how could he have compromised and broken up with his first love just because his mother didn't agree? He didn't love Lily either, or he wouldn't have broken up with her so easily. He loved me even less. He just coveted the comfort and sense of security I brought him. He just wanted someone to always stand behind him so that he could see that person when he turned around. To be honest, when I think about it now, I feel that I was incredibly stupid in the past. He and his mother tortured me so much, and I could still endure it. Maybe being infatuated really makes people live like they're not human. You have to wait until you've suffered enough, shed all your tears, and hit the wall before you're willing to turn back. In the following days, Jack was like a different person. He came to the downstairs of the hotel to look for me every day. He would call me, "I brought you the bagels from your favorite restaurant. Come down and try them." His tone of voice even had a hint of flattery. Just like I used to be. I suddenly remembered that when we were together before, I really liked the bagels from that restaurant. But the restaurant was too far away and there was no delivery service. Only when Jack came back would he pass by it on the way. But I asked him to bring them for me many times, and he never did. Not even once. Every time I asked, he either said he forgot or that he was tired. Now he thought of buying them for me. Unfortunately, I didn't want to eat them anymore. I ignored Jack. After the 1-month cooling-off period was over, I directly called him to come and get the divorce certificate. Jack didn't want to come at first. "Emma, I really don't think we need to go this far." I said I would change. "Besides, you're already at such an age. After the divorce, how will you live in the future?" He was still saying the same thing. "Don't bother, Jack. Don't tell me you're reluctant to get a divorce." I sneered. "Why are you so clingy, like a dog?" These were the words he used to say to me, and now I returned them to him exactly as they were. Jack wasn't angry. He just lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, "So, you won't turn back, will you?" I said firmly, "No." The setting sun stretched Jack's figure very long. Only then did I realize that he seemed to have lost a lot of weight, and his shadow was slender and lonely on the ground. He finally said in a low voice, "I see." We got the divorce certificate very quickly. Jack didn't say a word about the property division and let me take half of his fortune. When Jack's mother knew that I wanted half of the property, she almost cursed herself hoarse. Her last layer of hypocritical mask was also torn off. She called me shameless, saying that I was after her son's money and only knew how to suck blood from her son. I didn't listen to the end. I directly cursed. "It's none of your business. If you meddle anymore, be careful that it shortens your life." Then I hung up the phone. This time, Jack's mother used her old trick again, threatening to commit suicide to force him not to give me the money and asking him to sue me so that I would leave the house with nothing. But for some reason, he didn't listen to his mother this time. However, I wasn't interested in knowing either. I passed the interview at an accounting firm. Although it wasn't one of the top 4 accounting firms before, it was still pretty good. Coincidentally, they had a branch office in my hometown. After I applied, I directly went back home to work. My parents didn't force me to go on blind dates and get married anymore. Every day after work, I would go home for dinner. When I had nothing to do, I would go on trips or take walks with my parents. I was happy every day. I never thought of the past again. Only occasionally in my dreams at midnight, I would have a feeling as if I were in a different world. Those days of crying late at night, I once thought they were the pain that I would never forget in my life. I thought I would never be able to get out of it. But now I can hardly remember the sadness at that time. I stopped taking my medicine, and I was no longer depressed. I could sleep for 8 hours every day and never suffered from insomnia again. It's so nice. I heard about what happened later from a mutual friend. After Jack divorced me, he was completely down and out. He went out drinking every day and ignored the company. Several big orders went wrong, and the capital chain was directly broken. In the end, he had no choice but to declare the company bankrupt. His mother forced him to go on blind dates, but he never agreed. He even got drunk and cursed his mother, saying that it was all his mother's fault that we got divorced and asking his mother to get lost. His mother was so angry that she had high blood pressure and was sent to the hospital. Jack didn't care either. His father was even more of a hands-off person, leaving his mother alone in the hospital. I don't know how she is now. After breaking up with Jack, Lily still didn't change her ways. She hooked up with another senior executive in the company. As a result, the executive's wife found out and made a scene in the company, scratching her face. She even hung a banner downstairs of the company and rented a car to broadcast with a loudspeaker everywhere. "Thank you, Lily from this company, for helping my husband solve his physical needs for free." She somehow got the nude photos that Lily sent to the senior executive and directly mass-mailed them to everyone's email in the company. Lily was beaten up by her in the streets several times. In the end, she couldn't stay in the company anymore. I heard that she seemed to have some mental problems and was now taken back to her rural hometown by her parents. The friend finally said with a sigh, "You know, you guys were so good back then. Who didn't envy old Jack for having such a good wife like you? Why did he have to ruin everything for no good reason?" After hanging up the phone, I didn't know how I felt. I was probably a bit relieved, and also a bit complicated. Maybe people never know how to cherish what they have until they lose it. It's just a pity that no one will always wait in the same place. "Emma, come out and take a look at the place your dad and I chose. Let's go to Spain during the National Day holiday. How about it?" My mother called me from outside. I put down my phone and smiled. Coming. The cold night has passed. Looking back, there is the dawn. Epilogue. Jack's perspective. When I got home, Emma was sitting on the sofa. Surprisingly, there were no meals on the dining table. She said, "Let's get a divorce." I stopped in my tracks and couldn't help but sneer. Here we go again. Did she forget how she cried and begged me after she brought up the divorce last time? She said it was because of the potato chips on the passenger seat. I remembered that Lily ate them in my car yesterday. Just because of this? I couldn't understand. What are you going crazy for? But she didn't cry and question me like she used to. She just said coldly, yes, just because of this. Didn't she already know about me and Lily? Besides, what's the big deal about some potato chips? I was too lazy to listen to her nagging and casually said, fine. Emma, don't regret it. I knew she would definitely regret it. Emma loved me so much. She gave up everything to be with me back then. Over the years, no matter how mean I was to her, didn't she still stay by my side obediently in the end? It's only her who should be afraid of me abandoning her. When did I ever have to be afraid of her leaving me? I didn't expect that she was serious this time. Even when I called both of our parents, she didn't back down. I was a bit annoyed. Haven't we gotten through all these years like this? Besides, haven't I given her enough? In all these years, when did I ever treat her badly in terms of what she ate, drank, and used? I admit that I quite liked Lily. She always reminded me of my first love. Although I can hardly remember what my first love looked like, that feeling of youth made me feel like I was young again. What's wrong with a man looking for some freshness outside? Besides, I didn't have any real relationship with her, and I didn't let her threaten Emma's status either. Why did she have to be so stubborn? She was as annoying as ever. She said a lot of things about how my mother treated her badly. I fell silent. I remembered that my mother did seem to treat her a bit badly. My mother had a strong desire to control me and couldn't stand seeing us having a good relationship. I knew all that. But what could I do? That was my mother. But when her father asked me what I had promised him back then, I actually felt a bit guilty. Emma was really good to me. But over the years, I did seem to treat her not very well. She left, taking only a few pieces of clothing. If she left, then so be it. I'm not the kind of person who can't live without her. The earth can still turn without anyone. Now I can be with Lily openly. But strangely, I suddenly lost interest in Lily. When I was with her, I couldn't help but wonder what Emma was doing now. I was drunk, and she poured me water, but it was cold water. If Emma were still here, she would definitely cook hangover soup for me. No matter what time it was in the middle of the night before, every time I got up to drink the soup, it was neither too hot nor too cold, just warm. And when I got up in the morning, she would have prepared a table of meals. Then she would gently tell me that I couldn't drink anymore for the next few days and that I should take care of my stomach. I didn't pay attention to that at that time. Now that I think about it, did she stay up all night taking care of me? Looking at Lily's exquisitely made-up face, I suddenly felt a bit nauseous for some reason, so I simply drove her out. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I was lying on the floor, and my stomach hurt terribly. Where was Emma? How could she leave me here alone? I called her loudly, but the only sound in the living room was the ticking of the mantel clock. That's right. I suddenly realized. Emma had already left. She was going to divorce me. I could only get up and look for the medicine myself. In the past, every time I frowned, she would bring the medicine to me. Why couldn't I find it anywhere now? Where on earth did she put the medicine? I found it. There was still the sticky note she wrote on it. Daxi aluminum magnesium carbonate chewable tablets. Take 1 to 2 tablets at a time, 3 times a day, 1 to 2 hours after meals or before going to bed. I was stunned. The lost memories flooded back. I remembered when we just got married, she put all the medicines in a box and pasted sticky notes on them one by one. I laughed at her. Are you crazy? Isn't this just doing something unnecessary? She wasn't angry either. She just smiled and said, you always take medicine randomly. This way, in case I'm not at home in the future, you'll know how to take it. At that time, I disdained it and just thought she was like an old woman, being too nosy. She was so eager to revolve around me 24 hours a day. How could she not be at home? Now that I think about it, I don't know why my heart hurts so much. It turned out that she really wouldn't be at home. In the end, I didn't know if it was my stomach that hurt or my heart. I just felt like all my internal organs were clenched into a ball. Emma. I suddenly missed her very much. Emma didn't turn back this time. No matter how much I tried to get her back. On the day we got the divorce certificate, she went back to her hometown simply and neatly, not even looking back at me once when she left. The home was still the same home. But for some reason, it was always so empty that I couldn't stand it. I was afraid to go home. Because every place at home had the smell she left behind and the traces of her life, which almost drove me crazy. If I hadn't felt her warmth, her leaving wouldn't have made me feel so unbearable. So this is what heartache feels like? Before I lost consciousness from drinking, I couldn't help but think that this was how she felt in the past. Later, I started secretly looking at her social media account. She gained a little weight. There was light in her eyes. She really looked very happy. Only then did I know that she had really let go. And I finally understood that the saddest thing for me wasn't the day she left. It was every day that she would never come back.